turn it over to you.
I'll take it away. I do have some items to catch you up on, and maybe some other questions about the ongoings of TriMet. But I first wanted to just talk about the staffing that we have in Oregon City and the condition of the operator. And I'm pleased to report that Operator James, you might remember this is on the 33 on Mobile Lab in Oregon City. Underwent surgery for his wounds actually the day after the event and is recovering at OHSU. My understanding is that he will be released this week, so he's recovering well, but obviously it's a very traumatic injury, and he'll obviously not be with us for a while. So we're working very hard. His garage manager and assistant managers visit him at the hospital. This is Mary Fetch, and we're working to make sure that he has the support that he needs when he gets home. He lives alone, so if somebody's in a recovery mode and living alone, they need a little bit of extra help, and so we're making sure that occurs. So, as you may recall, there were all 3 other passengers that were also injured. Our understanding is that they all also recovered. 2 actually were admitted to the hospital. 1 was treated on-site release. And those 2 that were in the hospital will also be released this week, or may already have been. But as you well know, under HIPAA regulations, we kind of lose some contact with individuals that we can. But we have obviously sent our best wishes for a speedy recovery, and our certainly hope for the very best in terms of their recovery, and thank them for their service in helping out the operator in this difficult situation. Last Friday, you might know that the 19-year-old Austin Van Hagen was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree assaults. That was upgraded from second-degree assault. And we're working closely, of course, with the Oregon City Police on this, who have the lead in the investigation. So he also faces those assault charges, but also 3 felony counts of unlawful use of a weapon, and 1 count each of second-degree intimidation and fourth-degree assault. Those are both misdemeanors. So we'll work with the prosecutor and the police department to sort of obviously make sure that the prosecution continues there. So very troubling situation, very troubling incident, but fortunately everybody is on the road to recovery, and I think that's the very good news on this. If there are any questions on that, I'll transition to that.
If I may, is it appropriate without glamorizing, putting yourself in harm's way, that as a board we might recognize the citizens that actually helped to?
Yeah, we'll try to be in touch with obviously it's up to the citizens about their level of engagement with us, but we will be in touch with them. My hope is that we could obviously offer them our thanks as we move forward.
There's a delicate balance between putting yourself in harm's way and then doing it at an appropriate level of citizen.
Right. And always in regard for their individual wishes in terms of issues. So I appreciate that.
Pleased to hear you with that. Well, good. Pleased.
I did want to give you just a quick update. This is a bit of a snapshot on ridership, and I'm sure you're all very curious about how ridership is responding based on the fare changes and service changes that took effect in September. And I would caution, first of all, that 1 month isn't much of a picture, so we'll keep filling in the blanks as we move through this. Actually, what we'd like to do is really give you more regular reports on ridership on about a quarterly basis. We think this is about the right period of time to really begin to see real trends. I would just note that we saw some interesting trends heading into the fall and the summer. One was a steady increase in bus ridership growth over the summer, but a slight depression in max ridership, and we attribute that to a large extent to the fare enforcement program that we were beginning to see the effects of. It took effect a year ago, July, so as we moved to July and August, we began to see a slight decrease over the previous year's similar month, and I'm talking 1 to 2%, so not a large change. So as we moved into September, we did see overall weekly ridership down a tad, about 1.6%. But the interesting thing about this is bus ridership was actually up 2.9%. And we can track the other decrease in ridership almost entirely, 91% actually, to Fairless Square. So we lost a lot of the free riders in Fairless Square, if you will. But our estimates right now are that we really have not lost any of our paid riders, or very few. Now, I would also come back and caution, this is very early, and sometimes with these fare changes, elasticities take a while to sort of settle out in terms of choice. And so we'll begin to see how all of that goes. So the other sort of piece of good news out of the ridership was West continued its ridership increase. It was actually up 10.4% over the previous year. They're in the new average daily record of about 1,800 riders, so that's good news. I didn't mention MAX overall because of that reduction in free rail zone. Ridership was down about 7.9%. But again, 91% of that seemed to occur focused on the free rail zone. So from what we can tell right now is the paid ridership is about the same and right on target with our forecasts. And that's obviously what we're going to be looking at as we move forward as well. And we'll give you an update on some of the other programs around the downtown breakdown program as we go through the agenda today. Any questions? Steve Callis, I think, who's our expert in all this, is in the audience as well. So I've exhausted my knowledge, but there may be questions that others have.
In regards to so we're down, you said we're down overall about 1%.
1 point, got it here, hold on. 1.6%, yeah.
And that's in line with what our projections were going to be going forward based on the elasticity numbers that we utilize.
Yes.
Okay.
As far as we can tell, right?
Yeah, 1 month's tough to gauge.
Yeah, and following up, so the revenues are right on target with what
They are on target,
we thought.
yeah.
But based on 1 month's of activity.
Based on 1 month, and actually, you know, there's a lot of adjustments in this 1 month. There were, you know, people trading in tickets, and you know, there was a lot of upgrading of tickets, and so it's a little hard to sort of judge it. Nonetheless, from what it all appears right now, we're on target with the revenue assumptions that we made in the budget.
In looking at the changes in ridership, have you been able to determine how much of that was due to the reductions in service on some of the lines?
Well, again, I think the only service reductions we have were on the bus side, and overall bus is up 2.9%.
Despite that, right?
I don't think that in net, anyway, there may be some individual routes, which we'll continue to monitor, and we'll give you a full report on that as we get some better information as well. Let's see. A couple quick other topics. One is the Portland-Milwaukee project. I think you may have seen that we have been completing that snaky bridge that runs from downtown Portland to South Waterfront, and there were actually, we're going to, I think, show you a quick video clip that came from one of the news shows that was a time-lapse photography, so it was being put in place. So the final 28 girders of that very long bridge, a 1,700-foot long bridge, are now being put in place. This is the most serious, most impactful part of the construction because it is over the active roadways, and so there are some detours that are traveling as the girders travel along the edge of the. I think we've had good response from the city and from our cooperating motorists. I haven't heard of any major issues associated with that part of downtown.
Well, Brenda, you know, it's going to be a fluid situation, but take a look at this. These are the girders that's going to be putting in place. These are sitting on the ground right behind me, but if you look up behind us, you can also see that they have 3 of them in place up above Southwest Harrison. That's what they've done so far today. They've got 1 more they're going to work on in a little bit. Now take a look at what it takes to put them in place. This is a time lapse of workers using a giant crane to lift the multi-ton girder into the air, and then they maneuver it into place. A worker guides the end of it right into position as it is lowered down. Now, this work did catch the attention of an awful lot of people this morning, including one guy who watched the work with delight. He is just starting out his engineering career, and he'd like to work on a job like this someday.
When you're looking at it in the office, it's just nuts and bolts. But when it's out here, you kind of get to see the whole picture and really start to see it come together.
Now, it is going to take several days to get all the girders into place for the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project. This portion of it, there are 28 of them that do have to go into place. So the road closures and sidewalk closures are going to be moving around just a little bit at various times while this work is being finished. Back to you.
I would just note, once again, that those girders are manufactured at a Fought company in Tigard, Oregon, and placed here by a local company in Moline. So, again, a lot of local content. I did have just a couple other topics to cover. One is one of these topics which is a little invisible to most of the region, but nonetheless, those of you who are part of big organizations know what I'm about to talk about is a very big deal. But beginning of this month, or middle of this month, we will actually be updating our Oracle system, changing out all of our financial systems from one early version, which will no longer be supported by Oracle, to the new version 12. And so this has really been a year-long effort of our IT and finance and benefits department to actually both do the upgrade and make sure that it goes smoothly, but also to enhance our capabilities and our reporting functions that come out of those systems, and to try to upgrade our tools in all of these areas at the same time. So this is actually a very big deal, and again, the big day for cutover is October 16th, and so it's a very big deal from the internal standpoint. We actually are reducing the number of runs of check cuts and for vendors and other things as we get into this, so that we can focus our attention on making sure that this goes well. This whole effort really deals with all the Oracle application software from here at TriMet, and it's a pretty complex system. It's financial, human resources, payroll, general ledger, purchasing and inventory, fixed assets, cash management, and HR benefits. And we particularly have expanded the capabilities in HR benefits with this new upgrade. So that's a fairly major initiative by our IT and other departments, and actually a pretty major investment for us over this last year. And the other, you'll hear another report today about another IT/operations initiative, which is our CAD AVL system. I think you'll be impressed with that, and that's coming online as well. So we have a very busy IT department right now, in addition to fixing certain damage from wayward cars that occur in the road.
Do you want to comment on that further?
Well, what I could comment on is that the car was coming off the freeway off-ramp. There was a medical incident. The car was actually moving, we think, around 80 miles per hour. There's probably nothing very much that could have really stopped the damage that occurred when a vehicle is moving with that much speed and momentum. And it did hit a signal cabinet that had some vital connections. And one of our problems, of course, is that some of this stuff goes out of date pretty quickly, and so now we have to fabricate special equipment in order to replace it. It should be about a 2 to 3 week effort to get it back in place. I would emphasize that nothing there right now is out that is safety critical. We do take great care in making sure that we protect it and do everything we can for the safety critical functions, which is really the signal interties at that point. Over time, it's been interesting that Transit Tracker, of course, has become now a new standard for our customers, and we're pleased about that. But frankly, that is not a safety critical function, it's a convenient function for the customers. So level of protection on that is I think, appropriate. But again, we're anxious to get it back and up and running, and we're putting full speed ahead on trying to get the new components in place. And I should note that this will be an insurance claim. The cost will be insurance for the auto, which will be quite an expensive insurance claim. Last, perhaps, note I wanted to make is that we have issued an invitation to last year's General Manager's Budget Task Force members to rejoin us again this year as we begin to look at the budget challenges that are ahead. And so we're beginning to form that group. I just wanted you to know that we're underway with that. My expectation is that we'll probably have the first meeting sometime in December with real budget activities after the first of the year. And my sense is that the group this year would really like to drill down on a few topics in a much deeper way. And so we'll be working with them to make sure that, and I'm sure there will be some of the topics that they mentioned in their report of last year that are of particular interest to them. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. And finally, we were pleased to put together, I think, a very interesting seminar yesterday for about 100 TriMet staff, and unfortunately Dr. Bethel was able to attend. It was on the issue of demographic change and how do we as an agency embrace that demographic change and really become the best we can be with that change in place. And we were pleased to have as a speaker Dr. Manuel Pastor, who has presented at a number of conferences as well as recently at Metro, and beginning to talk about really the two big trends. One is the graying or balding of America, and the other is that we're becoming much browner as a face of a nation. And what does that mean for us in terms of the cultural changes that are upon us? And so I thought it was a very compelling and very interesting presentation. It seemed to really engage the staff a great deal. So I thought it was a very good thing to do. So just a short report on that. And that concludes my remarks. I'm sure other questions. Any other questions, Bill?
I just have a question for the budget advisory committee that's going to be put together. Have the folks from last year been invited, and
Yes.
or will there be additional new folks?
So we've invited the folks from last year, and we haven't heard from all of them. So what we'll do is go through that list, and then as we begin to see, do we have fall off, then we'll begin to look at filling in additional individuals. But if you have any suggestions or thoughts, I'm sure that we'll have some slots open.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? Great, thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. Do you want to introduce the next item too, or are you the presenter?
Well, I do want to introduce it, and I'd like to ask Shelley, Drew, and John L. to come up here because I'm going to call on a lot of help here along the way. What I wanted to do with it is actually give you an update on the budget resolution that you approved last June. And what we've done is put together a matrix that has the actual action item, if you will, from the resolution and the current status report. Some of these will have longer status reports. Some of them are very nice. We can simply say complete. But others are underway, and those are the ones that we wanted to give you a quick update on. The first one that I do want to spend some time on is the low-income mitigation strategies, and it's the $1 million program, which is actually $1 million addition, so the total program $1.3 million, given what we were already committing in our baseline budget to low-income mitigation. And so, John L., could you please give us a quick update on that?
Appreciate that, Neil. President Warner, members of the board, again, for the record, my name is John L. Bell, the Director of Commercial and TriMet. Good morning to you all. As Neil mentioned, you all will remember that you directed staff to create a mitigation program that helped offset the costs of this year's budget impact. I'm going to give you just kind of a brief update, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think before I start, as I start talk out in the community with a number of organizations, it has certainly resulted in a lot of good feedback for us, the fact that we have this program. So kudos to you all for pushing us forward in that respect. So the creation of a low-income mitigation program, as you know, the first is to offer a 20% price reduction to nonprofit organizations who serve low-income program populations. The second part of that program was the creation of a mini-grant of fund to help these organizations purchase more fares to serve more people. And lastly, the third effort that we're implementing is the creation of a leveraging fund to leverage resources from government, local, and national foundations for ongoing support of the mini grant program. So far in our first program, just by the way, and the packet that I just handed over, there's a rough timeline that I presented to the leadership team a few weeks ago, but also the application that we have asked the nonprofit organizations to complete, those that are interested. So essentially what we do is we accept these applications, we review it to ensure that they meet the criteria, and we issue out to them an agreement that they sign, which essentially acknowledges that they'll comply with all of our requirements. One of which is to maintain records, the other one is to record who the respective fairs are going to, and thirdly, to essentially ensure that they will be purchasing the same amount of fares as they purchased this past year, or they'll be purchasing more as a result of the 20% reduction in price. So far, with the first program, we've already resulted in about $80,000 in sales. This probably reflects about a month since we've been going so far. In terms of the impact on the program, 20% of that is $60,000 per course. We spoke with just a few of these organizations yesterday, wanted to get a sense of what does this really mean on the ground. And a few of the organizations stated that the program is helping them to purchase more fares. Purple, for instance, stated that they are able to help more recent immigrants access services and find employment than they have been in years past. So that's really great news. As we're looking forward to the next steps, we are now in the process of enrolling our government partners. You'll remember that our government agencies, such as counties and cities, many of them have already reached out to us. We'll also offer the same discount program to them, a 20% cost reduction. And so that's relatively going so well so far. We've started conversations with foundations, both local as well as a few national foundations, in terms of might there be some interest in leveraging the seed funds that this board has authorized. And those conversations have been going extremely well. We hope to solidify many of those commitments for the next months, couple months. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. But I guess the point that I would leave you with is, so far we've been running extremely fast, as you know, but the program is more relatively well.
Just how many additional nonprofit groups have joined the program?
35 are new.
So did I get the number right, which you're saying is about 60,000 with just the 20% subsidy?
60, I'm sorry.
So was it?
So $80,000 to sell, 20% reduction of that.
Okay, and that's just for 1 month's activity?
That's right.
Right, so extrapolate that over the rest of the year. So
That's right.
there's still considerable resources available.
Yeah, and that's before we've put online our government partners as well. So I think we'll be, again, when we estimated how much this would cost, we were extremely conservative because we frankly just did not know how many organizations existed that would want to partake in this program. And so we're, I think, about right where we probably estimated, but you're right, President Warner, so far we have 40 organizations. By and large, majority of those folks are new, and that's resulted in $80,000 in sales so far.
What might be nice, I'm just thinking again, I'm a graphic kind of guy, maybe in your next update, you can just kind of give us a breakdown of where those the resources are being allocated to the various, to nonprofits or government agencies, and for maybe for what kind of purposes. That would really help us get a flavor of how the money is actually being utilized in total.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Steve?
So, thank you for the update. We, everyone, the community, staff, the board, went through a lot of anguish during this process of changing fares and service levels. So, and I think this is a wonderful effort to address some of those concerns we heard. To the extent that we have upwards of 40 or more organizations, that's wonderful. A growth of participants is wonderful. Do we want to engage to broadly promote to the general community as well as those serviced by the specific organizations the program, or are we already doing that? so that the general community, in addition to those that are specifically being served by these organizations, are aware of the opportunity, and then they could seek out, based upon their own particular new knowledge, what organizations to go to. They may not even be aware of the organization to speak of.
Yeah, that's extremely good question. A part of the challenge with this particular program, as you know, it was not geared towards individuals for a variety of factors. Number one, we frankly just don't have the resources in order to means test individuals. So we were relying extremely quite a bit on existing nonprofit organizations who already serve these populations. So there's some delicate balances there in terms of promoting to the general masses these list of organizations. But that being said, one of the reasons of the mini grant program is to do exactly that, is to be able to help these nonprofits who already have budgeted amounts of how much fare they can purchase to be able to purchase more fares, thereby serving more people. So that will be part of the conversations with the mini grant program. Is, you know, part of the requirement that we want is we want folks to be able to have access to those fares from the streets, for instance. That may be beyond what they currently have on their roles in terms of clients they serve.
And I understand the balance. We don't want to over-promote and then have the funds consumed within the first quarter. Yet we want to broadly engage the community to say, we listened, we did hear you, we acted to the measure we could, and here's the result of it to date. Is the chart January through December how nonprofits typically manage themselves in a calendar versus July through June?
It varies. Some of the nonprofits are on October 1 fiscals, others are on yearly fiscals, so it varies.
So when do you think you would see their reports coming in? Monthly, at the end of their fiscal year, quarterly?
At the end of 6 months.
So to whatever degree we could get an update.
That's right.
And then obviously you're going to have, it'll be interesting to see that overall snapshot.
I agree with you. One of the reasons why, if you look at the last page, as you just did, Director Clark, one of the reasons why we asked for the organizations to capture the information in terms of where these shares were going is because we also need that for our transit equity as well, in terms of just understanding what folks out in the community are needing these shares for. And as that information becomes readily available, I'll certainly be presenting that to this board in a graphical fashion.
Yeah, last comment, it might be interesting to have an additional filter internally as to geography. Are we looking at inner Portland? With your previous reports, we see where how the community is becoming extremely diverse in the suburbs, the reaches of the region, but as poverty, the difference between those that have and those who have not, those who have less is growing and growing, and it might be interesting to see where the regional diversity, the regional usage is occurring, if possible.
Absolutely.
Just a comment. I did attend one of the meetings where there were a lot of the different nonprofits that were at a meeting, and there was a good representation from Washington County, Multnomah, and Clackamas. So I think that the intent, as we remember, to do this is because of the impact it was going to have to folks who did not have or had limited access or would not have any access to transit. So I would caution us where we definitely need to know specifics of where it's going, getting the data, looking at who is coming forward to use the information, but that we don't put so many parameters around it that it's going to make it difficult to make it happen. I mean, and because the intent was to make sure that we were being able to provide some kind of service for folks who were not going to be able to have it easily. So I think that because this is the first year, we're going to start and stop and look at adjustments. So I would definitely just want to caution us, you know, not to put the parameters around it that we can or that we should, but give it an opportunity to see where it goes.
Second topic. Thank you, Janelle. The Convention Pass program, and I did want Drew to give you a little report on this. We have completed this work, but I think it's also a model partnership, and one that I think Drew and many of the partners at Travel Portland and the Convention Center Metro have really worked hard on. So that you know how this worked, and turn it over to Drew.
Thank you. Good morning. As mitigation for the elimination of the free rail zone, we began meeting with regional partners with regard to how to provide a seamless transition for convention visitors who previously, of course, would enjoy traveling from downtown to the convention center free on transit. So in January of 2012, we began meetings with partners, starting with Travel Portland, along with our general manager. And we established some foundations. We were asked to consider creating a convention pass program, as I described. And we made it clear that our intent would be to provide to be the distribution partner in terms of a seamless program, and ask that our partners identify a funding source outside of TriMet. So we subsequently met with Travel Portland, Metro, Multnomah County, PBA, and the Portland Business Alliance, and the City of Portland. And after several meetings and back and forth, we came to a conclusion on the Convention Pass program that ensures that we provide pre-printed multi-day passes to convention attendees at the Oregon Convention Center, distributed by Travel Portland to the registration desks of each of the conventions, so that folks can get back and forth from their hotels and also back out to the airport at the conclusion of their convention. The funding comes by way of the Multnomah County transient lodging, hotel and motel tax, and it's administered by the Visitor Facilities Trust Fund, which is a partnership program, again, of the folks I mentioned earlier. And so with that program, we're able to satisfy their needs and also protect TriMet in terms of any exposure on our part. So that began the first week of September. Based on what we've approved so far, I'm recalling there's been about a half a dozen conventions that have come through at this point in time. So we think we're on track. The projection is for somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 conventions, representing about 1,100 people per convention that we would be serving.
I think one of the key assumptions that underlies this financial arrangement is the redemption rate. So if you give a convention delegate a pass, how many of them actually are going to use it, and how often are they going to use it, and that's what underlies our cost structure. And we've made some assumptions about that, so we'll be monitoring that going forward, and there's always a roll forward piece of this, which allows us to come back and report to the partners about whether we were right or wrong, high or low, and so another point of adjustment as we move forward. Questions on that? Thank you, Drew. Another key point of our budget decisions had to do with the lift boundaries, and there's really two pieces of this that we're paying close attention to. One was the alignment of the lift boundaries to the service boundaries within the district. But the other sort of key areas also has to do with the mooring withdrawal. And recall that we have the deadline coming up 1st of January, mooring is no longer part of the district. And the main concern expressed by the board as the withdrawal was approved was providing lifeline substitute services for those who are in need of our current lift service. So Shelley, perhaps an update on that.
So, good morning. As you recall, we did decide to go ahead and align the lift boundaries so that they were in alignment with our fixed route service. That took effect in September. In preparation for that, 6 lift service level boundaries were created for the weekends, Saturdays, and Sundays. To prepare our customers for that, all lift customers were sent a letter well in advance notifying them of what those changes would be. Additionally, we contacted about 400 county agencies who and service organizations who work closely with people in the disability community to make sure that they were really well informed of what was coming, so that we wanted to make sure we touched everyone and there was no surprises. As a result of those informational letters, in the first 4 days after we sent those out, we received about 118 calls from customers, and 77% of those were not impacted in any way by the lift boundary change, but they just needed some clarification and some extra assistance in understanding, what does this mean to me? So we helped them understand that. In many cases, we were able to either calm fears or help people understand what other additional resources were available to them through different programs like Ride Connection. Or we worked with them to establish different pickup points that are within the boundary. And that is very successful. It really is important to note that just because you were lift qualified before the boundary changed, when we change the boundary, it doesn't change your lift eligibility. So if any of these folks had the ability to just get within the service boundary, we were able to still serve them. Calls and concerns have significantly dropped off. Occasionally, we'll still have someone who will call and say, I haven't used Lyft for a while, help me out, help me understand, and we're happy to do that. So all in all, that's going very well. Now on to the boring change. Ride Connection and Clackamas County have been partnering to identify the additional services that they can provide in both the outlying areas of Clackamas County and the boring withdrawal area. The staff at Clackamas County Department of Housing and Human Services, that's a mouthful, are leading the work. And TriMet staff has been providing information for them on who was impacted, information on how they can get in touch with the customers, and any other background information they need in order to prepare their plan. They're working diligently on it, and they have told us that we can expect to see a draft copy of their plan soon. They had said late in the fall, and because we're doing a winter ops presentation later, it's pretty late in the fall. So, but all indications are that they will have a plan in place by January when the service is done in mooring. And I'm sure that when we get a copy of that plan, we can get that over to you.
Thank you, Shelley. I did skip over a couple items I just want to touch on real quickly. One is obviously the Portland School Youth Pass, and we do have that in place for this calendar year, as you've been briefed previously. I'm also in communication with the school district and the city to sort of make sure that their financial forecasts carry their contributions, their 1/3 contributions forward, and I've been assured by both parties that they are doing that, at least building into the forecast. Obviously, there'll be a change of personnel at City Hall, so there'll be another weigh-in on that, but there seems to be pretty strong support amongst the City Council to continue that program, same with the school board. So that's the update on that. Related to the transfer printers, that is well underway, but as you can imagine, this is a little bit of a logistic issue because we have to get the equipment, we have to link it into our electronics, and we have to install it on the 600 buses that we use and operate. So this is all underway. We actually expect an actual printer, first of the production printers on site here late this calendar year, and we'll be running it through the mill. And then we'll begin to test on a bus beginning of January. And the goal is for implementation in June. And again, that will then create the same standard of 2-hour transfers between the MAC system and the bus system, which is, I think, a simplification both for our operators as well as for our customers. And we'll do away with those tissue paper transfers that are impossible, even for me, to read at times. So I think that's a good accomplishment. We'll look forward to the implementation of that.
Question. Sure. Yes. I'm wondering, got to go to the after conference, how will this printer that's going to print just the transfer integrate with the new fare boxes that are being planned? Or is it going to be technology now that we're looking at and that we're installing that is now going to, as the new ones come on, go away? Or will they be able to be used? I just happened to, in one of the things, I spent a couple of informal times talking with persons about the fare boxes and the cards and all of that, and then looked at one that did do the printing of the particular transfer, as well as a reader that would read it and validate it as well. It was all in one unit. And so I'm just wondering,
we had a number of choices, very good question. We had a number of choices that we've sort of chunked through from a technical standpoint, and one was at an early stage to replace all the fare boxes with an all-in-one unit, and we chose not to do that for reasons of both cost, and the other element of it was just the flexibility of having the units be separate and standalone and sort of modules that plug into one another. We thought there was a great deal of advantage to that approach. So these printers would be compatible with our ultimate electronic fare system that we're moving to, but recall that's still 5 years out or so, so those could be a great deal of utility in between. But in any case, with any fare system, we still think there would be cash fares. And so the fare boxes will have to be able to accept cash and then issue the receipt through the printer in any case. So we do think that it does have long-term utility related to the system. The hope is that more people move to the electronic payment, and those printers don't get used quite as often, but nonetheless, for those who do use cash, it will still be an important component of the system. So, and there's lots of detail on that, as you would imagine. Yes. You have to go through a lot of that separately, perhaps. Let me sort of continue through a few of these. We might recall that your resolution also asked that we spend some time thinking about and bringing to the board a more comprehensive fare policy. I think this is actually a very important piece of work that needs to be done. It really begins to think hard about some of the choices that fares imply and sort of become more deliberate about what a fare policy means. And so we have, Drew has assembled a team within TriMet to begin to put together that information. And we're, for example, looking at the fare policies of other organizations, beginning to array out what the different choices are. And what we want to do is to begin to share with you some of that information in a more digestible form in about November, probably about your November briefing, and then begin to have you chew on that. It can deal with a whole lot of different issues, including the low-income mitigation issues, the question about what level of passenger revenue overall should be contributing to the operating costs. So there's a lot of embedded policy levers within a fare policy overall that we want to make deliberate and bring to you for your consideration. And I think we can take some time to think about that because it is a complex policy that really does need a great deal of review, I think, as we move through that. So we are underway with the basic research that we'll then be presenting to you more next month.
Mr. President?
Yes, please.
Question to you, and maybe even Drew can answer this. I noticed that what you've done is that you have an internal team, and I don't see anything in here, so that's hence my question. Are you listening to the people out there? Because if you're not listening to them and actually making them a part of helping to make the fare policy decisions, we're not doing a good job. We are going to fail. So I want to encourage that even when it's not a lot of time to come in November, that there are some listening sessions being done or some way to bring in the general public to talk to us and make sure that you kind of spread those around all of the TriMet districts and not just kind of just center into one area or to one side, but can get a basis, and particularly those areas where there is a great impact on those who have low income status and are very more transit dependent.
Appreciate that point. Drew, any
Thank you. We will ensure that we do that. We have a briefing with the general manager this week to just take the temperature in terms of a general framework based on what we see around the industry, so that we at least have some elements of best practices. That will give us an opportunity to go out and test with folks in terms of what we capture. So we're really at that stage where we just want to make sure we're on the right track in terms of a framework that would guide, rather than be prescriptive, a framework that would begin to guide fair policy. So that's very important, and thank you. We'll do that.
Thank you.
One particular element also that could be related to fair policies is the recommendation that related to the honored citizen fair level. And again, I don't see this as anything that's really a near-term recommendation that we need to make right away, but we do need to do a lot of work, and this is an area where, in particular, we need to engage the Budget Task Force, the CAT, many other stakeholders, where these fairs should be overall. And obviously, there are a lot of stakeholders that we can rely on in this case who are assembled that are very interested in this topic. And again, we'll bring this forward to the board as time progresses. Our current trajectory is to bring something to you in March or so next year. And again, I don't believe there would be any near-term changes in the fair, but this would be a policy that would guide our actions as we move ahead. Related to the topic on ridership data, we have a number of very interesting initiatives underway, and recognize that we do need more detailed data, particularly about our transit-dependent riders and our lower-income riders and how they interact with the system. So we have worked with, and I give John L. a lot of credit for this, in partnership with the National Institute for Transportation's grant, and actually have worked with the Oregon Transportation Research and Educational Consortium, or OTREC for short, which include PSU, Oregon State, University of Oregon, and one other, I believe. And they are working on a grant to understanding the transit-dependent population. They're actually doing that, I think, in 3 cities, and Portland will be one of those. So that would be actually very interesting and good piece of academic work that I think will lead to our understanding of this part of our constituency. And we are also beginning to sort of see how we can leverage that through our own fare surveys and other supplemental information that we regularly do to try to will be helpful to the overall study and augment our own knowledge of that. So this is obviously a piece of work that I think will always be underway, improving our data and our information. But that's some pretty significant steps since you adopted your resolution in June. On the labor contract, I would just note that we have continued to pay very close attention to the board's policy, which is, remember, to bring TriMet health and post-employment benefits in line with a sustainable forecast of future revenues. And that continues to be our guidepost as we move into the next series of negotiations. As I've informed you, both parties, the ATU and TriMet, have exchanged let's get bargaining letters for the new contract, which, as you know, expires November 30th. So we're right into it. We have not been able to establish yet a first meeting date, but we're anxious to do that. We hope that we can do this before the new year, so that we can begin to get the ground rules established and exchange initial proposals and begin to plan out a series of bargaining sessions into the first quarter of next year. So that's well underway, and we'll obviously brief you much further